Seoul was wrapped in the quiet elegance of an early autumn afternoon when Hye Kyo stepped out of the black sedan that brought her to the Cheongdam Art Museum. The breeze carried the delicate scent of fallen golden leaves, brushing lightly against her long coat as she walked slowly toward the entrance. Cameras clicked rhythmically, like soft rain tapping against windows. Yet she moved with an unbothered grace, serene, composed, and untouched by the noise around her. It had been years since she last addressed anything related to her past marriage. Years of silence so complete that even reporters had stopped asking. Hye Kyo had mastered the art of disappearing gracefully, traveling quietly across Europe, curating her inner world, choosing peace over headlines. But that calmness, that stillness, only made this moment more surreal. She had not spoken his name publicly since the day everything ended. Yet today, something in the air felt different. Deeper. Like a chapter softly reopening its worn, hidden pages. The museum, the lights were soft and warm, casting long shadows against white walls decorated with paintings of oceans and quiet forests. Artists, critics, and celebrities mingled in hushed voices. And in the midst of that gentle hum, Hye Kyo radiated an unspoken glow, a beauty carved by solitude and rediscovered strength. She had come merely to support a friend's exhibition. She had not expected anything unusual. But life tends to place us face to face with what we once turned away from. And today was no exception. During the Q&A session, a reporter from a well-known entertainment outlet tentatively raised a question. Voice wavered as if he feared his own boldness. Song. May I ask if you have any thoughts about Song Joong-ki's recent marriage? The room froze. Every whisper died mid-sentence. Every camera lifted in perfect unison. Even the air seemed to thicken around her. For a long, stretching moment, Hye Kyo did not respond. Lashes lowered gently, casting faint shadows on her cheeks. Her fingers tightened slightly around the clutch she held, and a faint, almost imperceptible breath escaped her lips. No one dared interrupt the silence. Years had passed since the divorce, years filled with speculation, analysis, blame, and misunderstandings. Through it all, she never spoke. The world formed its own conclusions while she walked her own path, far from noise, far from bitterness. She had learned early that grief was not something to display, it was something to sit with quietly until it softened into something gentler. And she had done just that. After the separation, she had spent months drifting through cities that didn't know her name: Florence, Prague, Paris. She photographed old churches and small cafes, flowers each morning just to place them on sunny windowsills, and filled her evenings with books she never had time to read. On some nights, when the streets were quiet, allowed herself to remember, not to suffer, but simply to acknowledge that she had once loved, deeply and wholeheartedly. There were memories she never spoke of to anyone. The time they got lost in Rome and laughed until their eyes watered. The early morning walks along the Han River before the city woke. The matching coffee mugs they bought on impulse in Japan. The evenings spent rehearsing lines together until one of them fell asleep on the couch. Little things, tender things, that made love feel simple, human, beautiful. Even after the divorce, she never hated those moments. She kept them tucked away like dried flowers between pages of a book, fragile, fading, but still precious. What she regretted was not the end itself, but the absence of time. Time to rest. Time to breathe. Time to be two ordinary people instead of public figures carrying the weight of millions of eyes. It was this absence that hurt her most. She once told a close friend during a private dinner in New York, "Maybe we were too tired. Maybe we loved, but we didn't know how to protect that love." But she never publicly shared that grief. She carried it quietly, letting time do what it does best, soften sharp edges until they no longer cut as deeply. Now, standing under the museum lights, she lifted her head at last. Her eyes looked different, steadier, gentler. Years of silence had shaped a new kind of strength within her. She gave a small, almost wistful smile, as though acknowledging both the beauty and the sorrow of the past. But she still did not answer. Not yet. Simply glanced toward the window, where golden leaves drifted slowly to the ground. She seemed to reflect on a life that once intertwined with another, and separated to follow its own path. The audience watched her, breathless, as if they too were revisiting their own past loves through her quiet expression. One thing was unmistakable. She wasn't resentful. She wasn't bitter. Wasn't wounded anymore. She had healed. Around her, the room remained still. The reporter lowered his pen, sensing he had touched a delicate thread. Her manager shifted nervously, unsure whether she would respond or dismiss the question like before. But this time felt different. Hye Kyo finally raised her eyes. With calm acceptance, she parted her lips, prepared to speak. The first time in years she would address the man whose life once ran parallel with hers. It was soft, almost like a confession carried by the wind. I think. Hye Kyo paused, her gaze drifting briefly toward a painting of a quiet blue sea hanging on the far wall. The kind of sea that looked calm from a distance. Held countless storms beneath its surface. For a moment, she seemed to be choosing not the perfect words, most honest ones. When she finally spoke again, her voice was gentle, steady, and heartbreakingly sincere. I think he deserves to be happy. The room fell utterly silent. It wasn't the kind of silence that followed shock, or the kind that descended after scandal. It was a silence born from respect, one that vibrated softly with emotion. So every person present could feel the weight and softness of her words sinking into their hearts. Hye Kyo continued. It doesn't always turn out the way we imagine. Sometimes, it takes us somewhere different. Sometimes it separates us so we can grow. Her expression didn't carry sorrow anymore. Instead, it glowed with a bittersweet acceptance of someone who had lived, loved, hurt, healed, and learned. She smiled faintly. A mature, quiet, almost luminous smile. Back then, we were both too busy, too overwhelmed, too consumed by everything around us. We didn't know how to protect each other the way we should have. There was no accusation in her tone. No regret aimed at anyone. Only a wistful tenderness. A sigh released after holding one's breath for too long. Someone very important to me, she said softly. We shared beautiful moments, and I am grateful for them. Truly. Reporters looked at her with eyes wide, not in shock, and something close to admiration. Even those who had never cared for her personal life now felt compelled to listen. Glad he found someone who makes him feel loved and secure, she added. It takes courage to begin again. I sincerely wish them both happiness. She said both was gentle, with no tremor. Bitterness, just pure sincerity. Her words carried a warmth that melted away the harsh edges of years of silence and speculation. It was the first time she publicly acknowledged Song Joong-ki's new marriage. And it was enough to make headlines explode across the internet within minutes. She wasn't finished. She inhaled softly, as if turning a page inside herself. And her voice grew even quieter, yet somehow stronger. As for me, she glanced down, her lashes fluttering delicately before she looked up again, meeting the cameras with clear, steady eyes. I'm finally ready to open my heart again. A murmur rippled through the audience. This was the shock none of them expected. Not a scandal. Not resentment. Not drama. But a woman admitting that she was ready to love again. Pain teaches us to be softer, she said. Time teaches us to be braver. I've spent these past years learning about myself, healing myself, and now I think I can welcome someone new with honesty and peace. She did not mention names. She did not hint at anyone specific. It didn't matter. Willingness to begin again was enough to move thousands of hearts. I don't know what the future holds, she added with a smile that was both shy and radiant. I hope, whoever comes into my life next will meet the version of me I wasn't ready to be before. Her words were poetry, soft, truthful, grounded in maturity. Not the dramatic flair of a headline-grabbing confession, but the gentle revelation of a woman who had walked through heartbreak and come out luminous on the other side. When the interview ended, the museum shifted back into motion. Reporters whispered to each other, unsure how to package such grace into a single article title. Fans outside clutched their phones, shining in their eyes as they read the first transcriptions. Hye Kyo stepped out of the building accompanied by a thin snowfall, soft flakes drifting down like blessings from the faded autumn sky. She paused briefly at the entrance. For the first time in a long time, she looked as though a weight had lifted from her shoulders. A young fan approached timidly and offered her a white rose, symbol of new beginnings. She accepted it with a warm smile that carried both gratitude and hope. As she walked to her car, her heels tapping softly against the pavement, it looked almost cinematic against the falling snow. Tragic. Not lonely. Peaceful. He had finally spoken. finally healed, free. And somewhere, whether in another city or across the ocean, Joong was living the life he chose, happily, with someone new by his side. There were no villains in her story, no grudges, no lingering shadows. Only two people who once walked the same path, loved in their own way, parted when they had to, now continued forward separately, stronger, wiser. Her final words to the press lingered in fans' hearts long after she left. We both deserve happiness. And I hope life is kind to him, to them, and to me. The world exhaled with her. And just like that, Song Hye Kyo stepped into her next chapter, one filled not with nostalgia or pain, but with a gentle certainty that love, in some form, would find her again.